Welcome to the Sound of Southern Charm podcast. I'm Stephen George, and I'm hoping to give you some inspiration and remind you of what you already know. You just need to keep going. Today, I'm going to continue my series called Mountaintop Moments, a macro view of the lessons I've learned in my working life. I created the name Mountaintop Moments because I grew up a few minutes away from the Blue Ridge Parkway. And when I was old enough to drive, I took several trips up there to enjoy the scenery. And like the stunning view from there, this podcast series is going to take a positive look at the big picture messages from all my jobs to this point. So let's get started. So when we ended the last episode, we were talking about how I was taking a job as an associate producer at the local television news station. But before I move into talking more about what I did while I was in that role, I've got to stop for a second and really talk about a career-changing decision that I had to make. A lot of things came to a head in May of 2006. I was graduating college. I was also looking for a full-time position straight out of school. Luckily, I had the internship at the TV station that was pushing into a full-time position. So not only did I have those two things, I also still had my job at Double C. Well, here's where it gets interesting. One Friday afternoon when I was there to get my weekend work assignment, I saw the district manager for warehousing in our office. He and my current manager at the time asked me to come in to have a conversation. They wanted to know if I was interested in going into warehouse managing. The plan was to start me training at a small warehouse, where I would learn more and more skills and become comfortable in the role, and then move up to different locations as needed. So here I am, a guy with literally the ink still wet on his college degree, and these two managers are already laying out my career trajectory. Not a bad problem to have if you're looking for stability. In less than a week's time, I had 2 job opportunities, and I had to pick one. So if you've been listening to this podcast, you already know the decision I made, but you don't know the why behind it. And I kind of wanted to spend a little bit of time today talking about that. To help make the decision, I remember making a list of pros and cons for each job. The pros for Double C were pretty easy. I had been there for years. I had really worked on my reputation in that company. I had done a lot of things, and that had attracted some positive results, which had led me to this point. And at the TV station, I also had a pretty good rapport after only being there for a little over a year at this point. But 5 years of a reputation versus 1 year kind of tipped the scales toward Double C in a way, because there was still a little bit of the unknown factor heading into a TV job. And because my hard work had been rewarded at both jobs, I felt appreciated at both locations. So that was also a positive for Double C and the TV station too. The elephant in the room was honestly the money. As an associate producer, I was going to gross $20,000 a year, which is why I made the comment earlier that I was not looking to get rid of my other job at Double C. It's very hard to live on that type of money. Where at Coke at the time, I was the highest paid part-timer they'd ever had on record. So even if I had stayed at that part-time pay, but for full-time hours, I was going to easily make at least $10,000 more a year. That's a big chunk of change when you're first setting out on your own and you're doing all the adulting things like looking at healthcare benefits and retirement and, paying rent or looking at potentially putting together a mortgage down the road. It's all of those things when you're coming out of school looking for a full-time job. So at this point, the money was starting to tip the scales in Double C's favor. So what made me change my mind? So as I deliberated back and forth, one thing stuck in my mind, and that was the why. Why did I choose to go to college? If you'll remember from previous episodes, I decided when I was about 16 that I wanted to be a journalist. And here was that opportunity, straight out of school, staring me in the face. So was I going to turn the opportunity to become a reporter down just because the money wasn't there right now? Being an associate producer and being a reporter are very different things. But for me, one led straight into the other, and I could see that finish line in front of me. So after spending some time weighing my options, I had to go back to Double C and let them know my decision. I never thought I'd turn down a job that paid more money, but the passion simply wasn't there when it was compared to reporting. What you didn't hear me say is that I didn't have passion for Double C, because I had it. I was brand loyal. I liked my job. I got along with the people that I worked with, and they wanted to reward me by giving me an opportunity to move up in the organization. And that's why that was one of the biggest decisions I've ever had to make, because in that moment, I chose my passion over my finances. Have you ever been in that position? Which way did you lean? Do you think it was the right choice? In a future episode of this podcast, I plan to talk more about career transitions and the reasons behind the decisions people make. Be sure to hang around for that episode. Next time, we're going to talk about my role as an associate producer and how I moved up the ranks at the local TV station. Be sure to subscribe to find out the next part of the story. If you're interested in working together, check out my samples at stephengeorgevo.com. You can also email me at stephen@stephengeorgevo.com. See you next time.